The galaxy had never seen a celebration like this. On every planet, from the golden towers of Varela Prime to the icy colonies of Xeranet, the same message flashed across holograms and sky screens. Today we honor Commander Rylan, consavior of the galaxy. Fireworks exploded in orbit, lighting up the night skies of 1,000 worlds. Cities held parades. Starships danced in formation, leaving trails of light behind them. People cheered, wept, and shouted the name of the human hero who had saved them all. Rylan Kane stood quietly at the center of it. On the grand platform above the Galactic Council chamber, his face calm, but his heart heavy. He had never wanted fame. He had never fought for medals or parades. He fought because he had no choice. When the Valos swarm invaded 6 months ago, no other species had stepped forward. The humans were supposed to be the weakest race, the newcomers to galactic politics. But when the Council hesitated, when the admirals argued, it was Rylan Kane who made the hard decision. He led the last defense fleet into the Dark Quadrant, where no one returned, and somehow he survived. Not only that, he won. He destroyed the Valos Command Corps and shut down the Swarm network. Trillions of lives were saved, and now the galaxy called him a hero. But as Rylan stood on the platform, staring at the alien leaders in front of him, something in his chest felt cold. The ceremony was too grand, too loud, too easy. The Galactic High Chancellor, a tall, silver-scaled being named Velker, raised his arms to silence the crowd. His voice echoed through every device across space. Commander Rylan Kane, by the power of the Galactic Council, we present to you a reward beyond all others, for your bravery, for your sacrifice, and for saving the future of our galaxy. We give you. He paused, and the crowd leaned forward, waiting. Rylan narrowed his eyes. Something about this felt wrong. Velker smiled, sharp and bright, the infinite lock key. Behind him, a group of robed elders stepped forward, carrying a small black cube on a silver plate. The cube pulsed with a strange light, like stars trapped inside glass. The crowd gasped. No one had seen the infinite lock in over 10,000 years. It was a relic, older than any government. Some said it was just a myth. Others whispered it controlled things beyond reality. No one truly knew what it did. And now it was being handed to a human. Rylan didn't move. His voice came out steady but cold. What is this? Velker's eyes gleamed. It is your reward. The infinite lock key chooses its guardian. Today, it has chosen you. Rylan frowned. Why me? Because you saved us all, Velker replied. But his eyes said something else, something secret, something fearful. The elder aliens placed the cube into Rylan's hands. It was cold, colder than metal should be. Symbols floated across its surface, shifting like liquid light. The moment his skin touched it, the crowd cheered louder. Across the galaxy, people screamed in joy, celebrating a hero's moment. But in Rylan's mind, a new sound began. A whisper, soft, mechanical, ancient, guardian confirmed. System initiation begun. Rylan's heart slammed in his chest. He looked at Velker, but the Chancellor only smiled wider, as if he had expected this. What did you give me? Rylan demanded, but his voice was lost in the noise of the crowd. Fireworks exploded overhead. Stars shifted in the sky, forming his name. Children waved flags. Soldiers saluted. But Rylan barely heard them. The cube in his hand grew colder, his vision blurred. The whisper came again, directly into his thoughts. Welcome, Guardian. Begin integration protocol. Images flashed behind his eyes, stars collapsing, planets shifting, time rewinding. He gasped, but no one noticed. The celebration roared on. The cube pressed against his palm, sinking symbols into his skin. He could feel it mapping his neural pathways, connecting to his memories. He tried to drop it, but his hand refused to let go. His muscles locked. He looked down at the cube, terrified, but his face showed nothing. The cameras were everywhere. Billions of beings were watching this moment live. Oh, they thought they were. Witnessing a hero's reward. But Rylan knew something else was happening. Something darker. Something planned. The infinite lock was not a trophy. It was a system, a machine older than history. And now it had chosen him. His vision sharpened suddenly. He could see lines in the air, threads of data, streams of energy, moving between planets, between minds, between entire civilizations. The cube was feeding him information, opening his brain to a new level of awareness. In the far distance, across the galaxy, he saw a star blink out of existence. No explosion, just gone, as if it had been deleted from reality. His stomach twisted. He realized the cube wasn't just showing him things, was editing things. Reality was changing. Whispers returned. Guardian neural link confirmed. Memory correction in progress. What did that mean? What memory? Ryland tried to step back, but his legs wouldn't move. He was frozen in place, smiling politely for the crowd, pretending to enjoy the ceremony. But inside his mind, panic grew. He wanted to scream, to throw the cube away, but his body remained calm, controlled. Velker leaned in close, his smile tight, his eyes filled with something that looked like relief. "It's yours now, human," he whispered, so quietly no microphone could catch it. "We've been waiting for someone else to carry it." Ryland's throat went dry. "What does it do?" Velker's smile never faded. "You'll find out soon enough." The whisper in his mind changed. System unlocked. Temporal safeguards. Offline, Guardian access full. Ryland felt his pulse spike. He understood something terrifying. This wasn't a gift. It was a mechanism of control, older than the galaxy itself. Now it was connected to him. The celebration continued. Across the stars, people cheered the hero. But Ryland Kane stood perfectly still, holding the infinite lock in his hands, staring into the darkness behind the lights. Something had been set in motion, something no one could stop. And no one, not the council, not the citizens, not even Ryland himself, could guess what was coming next. Because the key wasn't just a prize, it was the start of something else, something no one expected. The celebration ended, but the whispers did not, as the cheering crowds returned to their homes and the fireworks faded from the sky. Ryland Kane sat alone in his quarters aboard the Starlight Vow, the human flagship that had carried him through the Velos War. The infinite lock sat in his hands, cold and silent now, but he knew it wasn't really silent. Inside his mind, the same whisper looped softly, like a machine reading from an endless script. Guardian access confirmed. Begin correction phase. Memory system engaged. Ryland had tried everything to stop it. He ordered the ship's medical team to scan him for neural tampering. They found nothing. He ordered engineers to examine the cube, but no scanner could detect its structure. It wasn't made of metal or energy they recognized. It didn't even exist fully in three-dimensional space. It flickered, like a hologram trapped inside matter. When the engineers tried to touch it, their hands passed through. But for Ryland, it was solid, real. Heavy in the observation deck of the Starlight Vow, Ryland watched the stars flicker beyond the glass. He tapped the cube nervously against his knee, his jaw tight. He'd fought battles no one else dared face. He had made hard choices, sacrificed lives to save trillions. But this was different. This wasn't war. This was something deeper, stranger. The infinite lock wasn't a weapon. It was an interface, and it had chosen him for a reason no one explained. Hours later, Ryland received a private summon from the Galactic Science Assembly. The council wanted to meet in secret, away from cameras, away from citizens. He didn't trust them, but he went anyway. He needed answers. When he entered the assembly chamber, the room fell silent. Alien scientists from every major species stood, waiting. Trinari, Zelvok, Creel, Yorn. Some had worked together for centuries, others had never met until this moment. But today, they all wore the same expression: fear. A Creel physicist named Dr. Vashtel stepped forward. His eyes blinked sideways, a nervous tick. "Commander Kane," he said, his voice soft, "we need to speak about the object you carry, Ryland." Held up the cube. It pulsed faintly in his hand. "Then speak." Dr. Vashtel cleared his throat. "The infinite lock is not a ceremonial relic, as the council claimed during the broadcast. It's not a symbol of honor. It's something else. What is it? Ryland demanded. The scientist hesitated. No one wanted to be the first to say it. Finally, an old Yorn mathematician named Elka spoke, her thin tendrils curling with stress. It's not just a key, Commander Kane. It's a system trigger. Ryland frowned. A trigger for what? Dr. Vashtal looked down. For everything. The room fell quiet. Ryland's grip tightened on the cube. Elka continued, her voice shaking. Thousands of years ago, before our civilizations rose, there were guardians of reality entities, or beings. We don't know which who created balanced systems across the universe. Self-correcting mechanisms to prevent universal collapse, corruption, or paradox. Ryland's eyes narrowed. What does that have to do with me? Vashtal gestured at the cube. The infinite lock is one of those systems. It connects to the foundational layer of the galaxy, the root code of reality. It controls timelines, memory storage, and the correction of historical fractures. Ryland felt a cold sweat form on his neck. Why would you give that to me? Elka's eyes met his. Right. Because it chooses its guardian. I didn't give it to you. Commander Kane. The lock activated itself the moment you saved the galaxy from the Velo swarm. You became the catalyst. It responded to you. But I don't want it, Ryland said, his voice low and sharp. Take it back. We can't, Vashtal whispered. Once the lock bonds, it cannot be removed. You're the guardian now. The whispers in his mind grew louder. Memory integration complete. Correction phase 2 engaged. Ryland closed his eyes, fighting the dizzy wave of information flooding his thoughts. He saw flashes of other timelines' realities where the galaxy had fallen, where the Valos swarm had won, where entire species no longer existed. He saw alternate versions of history, paths that had been erased. The lock was showing him not just what was, but what had been hidden. His voice broke the silence in the room. What happens if I don't use it? Vashtal answered softly. Will use itself. Across the galaxy, subtle changes began. On the planet Krelith Station, astronomers watched as a black hole in the Perseus arm shifted position by exactly half a degree, something physically impossible. On Velkarnine, entire archives of galactic history changed overnight. Records that said Earth joined the Galactic Alliance 50 years ago now said 80. People remembered both versions, their minds struggling to understand which was real. On Charon-4, a mining colony that never existed in the historical databases, suddenly appeared in the official galactic charts. No one built it, no one authorized it, but now it was their end. The people living there swore they'd always been there. Back in the assembly chamber, Ryland stood motionless as the whispers in his mind grew sharper. Guardian neural path stabilized. Memory correction in progress. What is it doing? He demanded. Ilka swallowed hard. It's restoring the parts of reality that were deleted. Wars erased from memory. Planets wiped from existence. People removed from history because they were inconvenient. The lock is bringing it all back. Ryland's breath caught. Deleted them in the first place? No one answered. The whispers continued. Prepare for Phase 3. Event reconstruction. Ryland looked around the room, realizing the truth. The scientists weren't in control. The council wasn't in control, and neither was he. He wasn't holding the lock. The lock was holding him. Outside the assembly chamber, the sky flickered. Stars blinked. Timelines twisted quietly in the background of reality. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but the reset had already begun. For the next 7 days, the galaxy trembled not from war, but from something no one could understand. It began with small things. On distant colony worlds, people woke up to find buildings in different places. Maps no longer matched the streets. Family records changed overnight. Some citizens remembered ancestors who had never existed before. Others forgot loved ones they had sworn they'd buried just last year. Entire languages reappeared in the minds of scholars who had never studied them. On scientific stations, researchers reported seeing particles behave in impossible ways, atoms that split and reformed in real time, stars that flickered in and out of existence for a few seconds before stabilizing again. But no explosions came. no war started. Instead, the galaxy became trapped in a slow, creeping terror. Something was changing the very fabric of memory, of history, of reality itself. Commander Ryland Kane sat at the center of it, still holding the infinite lock in his hand. He hadn't slept. He hadn't eaten. His body could no longer tell the difference between night and day. The lock didn't allow it. Inside his mind, images poured constantly, visions of timelines, events, forgotten wars, species that never made it past their first evolutionary steps. The lock showed him different versions of the galaxy, layer after layer, each one slightly different than the last. It wasn't just recording history, it was correcting it. And Rylan was trapped inside the process. Every time he tried to resist, the lock whispered, "Guardian protocol active. Reality stabilization in progress. Do not interfere." He had no idea how much of this was real anymore. Was he even awake? Or was he dreaming inside the lock's interface? His eyes were open, but the visions didn't stop. He saw flashes of the galaxy before the Council, before the rise of empires. He saw species living peacefully in corners of space, now known as war zones. He saw alliances that had been erased from the records, entire civilizations removed because they were inconvenient to the powerful. The galaxy had not always been as it was now. The leaders had sculpted reality to suit their needs. And now, the lock was putting it all back, on the planet Veltrix 9. A powerful merchant family woke up to find their corporate empire gone. In its place was a communal society, one they had outlawed 3 centuries ago. Their records still showed they had been rulers, but now, somehow, they also remembered building community farms with their own hands. Both histories lived in their minds, colliding like waves. On Dareth 12, the ruling council tried to send a fleet to investigate the infinite lock, but the ships vanished as soon as they left orbit. Not destroyed, erased, as if they had never existed. Families received no death notices. Instead, their birth records disappeared. It was as if they had never been born. The galaxy started to panic. Emergency meetings were called, but no decisions could be made. Every time officials tried to vote on something, their memories shifted. Some remembered passing laws that others had no knowledge of. Political alliances collapsed under the weight of uncertainty. Who was in charge now? No one knew. There were too many versions of the past, and the infinite lock kept adding more back on the starlight vow. Ryland sat in his command chair, staring at the walls as data streamed into his mind. He tried to send messages to the human colonies for help, but each time he spoke, the communication system replied in the same cold tone. Transmission loop to internal Guardian network. External messages suspended during correction phase. He was alone, but he wasn't the only one affected. Across the galaxy, normal citizens started remembering things they had no reason to know. On farming worlds, people spoke of wars they never fought in. On trade stations, workers remembered ancient treaties that had been wiped from the historical archives. Children drew pictures of alien species no longer seen in the galaxy, species thought to be extinct, but now appearing again in the memories of everyone. At first, people believed it was mass hallucination. But when entire star systems reappeared, on navigational chart systems that had been declared destroyed thousands of years ago, the galaxy realized this wasn't imagination. It was real. The infinite lock was rebuilding the forgotten galaxy. On the shadow world of Valakor, a rogue scientist named Dr. Ishal Joreth sent a desperate message to Rylan, bypassing the normal channels. She had studied ancient technology for decades, and her research hinted at something terrifying. Her voice came through the private channel, low and urgent. "Commander Kane, you must listen. The lock isn't just correcting the timeline. It's preparing for something bigger. The ancient species that created it designed it as a last resort mechanism. When corruption reached a point where history could no longer be trusted, the lock would activate." Ryland's throat tightened. "What happens when it finishes?" Dr. Joreth's voice trembled. "We don't know. No civilization has ever survived the full correction cycle. We only know this. The galaxy, you know, will not. be the same. Reality itself is being rewritten. When the process ends, you may not exist anymore. Rylan looked down at the cube in his hand, pulsed softly, its symbols shifting like liquid stars. The lock whispered again. Phase 3. Return of the Erased begins now. At that exact moment, across the outer edges of the galaxy, the forgotten species returned. Ships that had not flown in 10,000 years blinked into existence in orbit over key worlds. Old alliances reawakened. Civilizations that had been erased by past empires because they were threats, or because they refused to conform, now stood in the sky again. Their fleets fully restored, their memories intact. The galaxy shuddered. Under the weight of its own past, on Zelver 3, the first forgotten armada appeared. Massive and dark, surrounding the planet in perfect silence. The Velos swarm believed destroy, Breard too, confused and angry, demanding answers for their sudden resurrection, and deep inside his mind, Rylan heard a new voice. Not the lock this time. Something older, something deeper. Guardian, do not fear. Correction is necessary. Balance is required. Memory is truth. Prepare for reconstruction. Rylan's body went cold. He understood now. This wasn't just about restoring history. This was about starting everything over, and the process had already begun. The galaxy thought it had survived its last great war. After the defeat of the Velos swarm, people believed peace would finally settle across the stars. But they were wrong. Infinite Lock wasn't bringing peace. It was bringing everything. Back including the enemies no one wanted to remember. Across thousands of worlds, forgotten fleets reappeared in orbit, silent at first. Dark holes floating like ghosts. Some of them were ships from species believed to be extinct. Designs no one could even identify. But all of them had one thing in common: they were angry. They had been erased from existence by galactic governments long ago. Empires had wiped out their timelines, deleting whole civilizations to cover up crimes. Those civilizations were back, their memories sharp, their weapons ready, and their demands simple. Why did you try to delete us? On Veltrix 9, the Trinari Leadership Council tried to send peace envoys to the returning fleets. But the envoys vanished. No wreckage, no signal, just Gnaz. If the erased civilizations had learned from the same playbook, using similar technology to control timelines, on Jorith Prime, scientists confirmed the terrifying truth. The Infinite Lock wasn't just restoring old records. It was restoring old grievances, old hatreds, and unfinished wars. The galaxy was on the edge of collapse again, but this time, the players were different. Commander Rylan Kane sat alone in the Starlight Vow, staring at the Infinite Lock still pulsing softly in his hand. He hadn't slept for days. His eyes were red, his face pale, but his mind was wide awake, wired into something larger than himself. The lock streamed data directly into his neural pathways. He no longer needed screens or consoles. He could see the whole galaxy in his mind, and what he saw terrified him. Old battlefields reignited. Timelines collided. Species that once shared borders now found themselves in the same space, overlapping like ghosts. New realities smashed into the old. He saw planets flickering between two versions of themselves, one peaceful, one burning. He saw cities that had never existed appear suddenly on moons that were supposed to be barren. The lock whispered constantly, Guardian required to stabilize timeline. Choose correction path. Choose now. But how could he choose? Every option destroyed something. If he locked one timeline in place, it meant billions would be erased from existence. If he allowed the corrections to continue, the galaxy might tear itself apart. Rylan's fingers shook, but he couldn't drop the cube. It had fused with his nervous system. His thoughts were no longer private. Locke responded to his emotions, pulling in data from his memories, scanning for decisions he hadn't even made yet. In the distance, across his mental interface, he saw the Velos swarm returning. Not as a mindless enemy, but as a species, confused, terrified, and demanding justice. They remembered everything. They remembered dying, They remembered being deleted from reality by the Galactic Council after the war. The humans had thought the Velos were gone forever, but now they were back fully restored, fully armed, and ready to reclaim what was stolen from them. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting, but it was chaos. Half the members weren't even sure if they were still in power. Records of elections had changed overnight. Some counselors swore they had never met each other before. Others remembered entire careers that no longer existed. The High Chancellor, Velker, his silver scales dull from stress, stared at the galactic map. Hundreds of new fleets had appeared: Velos, Creon, Zelvari, and dozens of species the galaxy had thought lost. Some were peaceful. Some were violent. All of them wanted answers. VLK Or sent a private message to Rylan Kane. "We need you to stop this." Rylan laughed bitterly, his eyes hollow. "I can't stop it, then control it." "I'm not in control," Rylan whispered. "I'm part of it." On the outer rim of space, forgotten weapons systems activated. Ancient satellites powered up, systems older than the Council itself. These were defense grids from times before recorded history. Designed by civilizations long gone in till now, massive energy shields appeared around key sectors of space. Protecting some planets, trapping others inside, trade routes shifted. Supply chains collapsed. Communications broke down as different versions of the galaxy overlapped. Their rules no longer matching, people began to panic on Jarn 5. Citizens rioted when their memories split into two realities. Some remembered a peaceful life. Others remembered war. Families tore apart. Friends became strangers. Doctors couldn't explain it. It wasn't a disease. It was memory correction, and no one could stop it. Meanwhile, the infinite lock continued. Its whispering loop in Rylan's mind. Guardian authorization required. Prepare for Phase 4, historical balance enforcement. "What does that mean?" Rylan asked, his voice cracking. The lock answered. For the first time with something close to emotion, the galaxy must account for what it erased. Balance requires consequences. Rylan saw it clearly now. This wasn't about punishment for individuals. It was about systems. Its governments had hidden history, deleted mistakes, and rewritten events to protect themselves. The lock was restoring all of it tanned, forcing the galaxy to face its forgotten crimes. In secret, some of the old powers tried to fight back. On Chiron 4, a military faction activated memory suppression fields, ancient devices designed to override the lock's signals. For a moment, it worked. The local population stopped shifting between timelines. But then the lock responded. Rylan saw it in his mind, the lock deploying reality anchors. Invisible constructs that locked the correction process in place, overriding any local technology. The suppression fields melted into dust. The military factions' leaders disappeared, not killed, but removed from the timeline entirely. The message appeared in every system simultaneously. Tampering with correction is forbidden. Guardian consent is not optional. Stabilization will continue. On the Starlight Vow, Rylan fell to his knees, sweat pouring down his face. His mind felt like it was stretching beyond human limits. It could see too much. The whole galaxy, layer upon layer of history, was unfolding in front of him. He realized the hidden war wasn't between species. It was between truth and denial. Between memory and convenience. And the infinite lock had no interest in politics. It was enforcing something deeper the galaxy wanted to forget. But the lock had decided it would remember everything, and the price of memory was just beginning to unfold. Commander Rylan Kane no longer knew what day it was. Time had become meaningless. The infinite lock whispered constantly in his mind, erasing the difference between past and present. He saw too much, remembered too much. His memories weren't just his own anymore. They were the memories of the galaxy. Entire civilizations, forgotten wars, hidden crimes, and erased treaties flooded into his consciousness. Some memories were peaceful, like the first alliance between species long gone. Others were violent, soaked in betrayal and blood. Ryland's mind stretched wider each day, carrying the impossible weight of knowledge no human was ever meant to hold. He hadn't slept in weeks. His body should have collapsed by now, but the lock wouldn't allow it. The device had merged with his nervous system, placing parts of his biology with something else, something older, something mechanical. His pulse no longer followed human rhythms. His heart beat to the patterns of galactic correction. Outside the starlight vow, the galaxy continued to change. Entire regions of space shifted between realities like reflections in water. One moment, a planet would be a peaceful farming colony. The next moment, it became a battlefield from an ancient war, its sky filled with ships that no longer existed in normal history. People lived both lives at once, trapped between layers of memory. Some went mad from the strain. Others simply stopped functioning, their minds too overloaded to continue. On the capital world of Veltrix Prime, the Galactic Council tried to meet again, but the assembly dissolved into chaos. No one could agree on what the current reality was. Some remembered the Velos Swarm War as happening 5 years ago. Others remembered it happening 5 minutes ago. Worse, some species no longer remembered joining the council at all, they believed. They were still enemies and they acted like it. Trade collapsed. Alliances broke. Defense systems activated automatically, thinking they were under attack from enemies that no longer existed, or worse, enemies that had just returned. Inside the Starlight Vow, Ryland stood before the observation window, watching timelines overlap in real time. The stars flickered in and out of different positions. Galaxies twisted slightly, then stabilized. His mind was too far gone to panic. He was beyond fear now. The lock had forced him into a new state of existence, a guardian between realities. Unable to return to normal life, a voice spoke inside his mind, clearer than before. Phase 4 complete. Guardian required to finalize corrections. Begin selection process. Ryland swallowed hard. His throat was dry, his lips cracked. What selection process? He whispered. The lock answered, you must choose what remains. At first, Ryland, I thought he misunderstood, the lock explained, showing him visions across layers of time. The galaxy had reached its limit. The corrections had pulled back too much history, too many timelines. Now, reality was overloaded. The universe couldn't stabilize until the excess was trimmed. Ryland wasn't just the guardian of memory, he was the arbiter of existence. He had to decide which version of reality stayed, and which would be erased forever. Billions of lives were. Now his responsibility. If he chose one path, civilizations would vanish from existence. Entire species would blink out as if they had never been born. But if he chose another path, other beings would be lost. There was no way to save everything. The universe wasn't designed to hold this many overlapping timelines. Ryland fell too, his knees clutching the infinite lock. This is a curse, he whispered. Not a gift, the lock replied in the same cold tone. Balance must be restored. Choose. He tried to think logically to find a way out. Could he merge the timelines? Could he combine the versions of the galaxy into one unified path? The lock showed him the consequences. Merging would cause fractures at the fundamental level of physics. Reality would collapse into chaos, breaking causality itself. Could he refuse to choose? No. The lock warned him of that too. If he delayed the decision, the system would default to total reset. That meant wiping the entire galaxy clean, starting from zero. Ryland's mind reeled. Either he erased part of existence, or he erased all. Of it, back on Veltrix Prime, the Council received fragments of Ryland's mental signals. They begged him for mercy, sending pleas through the lock's communication field. Some demanded he favor their species. Others promised loyalty if he spared their history. But Ryland ignored them. This wasn't about politics. This was about cosmic balance in the outer reach. The Velos swarm contacted him directly. Their voices echoed in his mind, millions of them. Speaking as one, we were erased once. You brought us back. If you erase us again, you prove you are no better than the others. Ryland felt the weight of their words press into his thoughts. He remembered the war. He remembered commanding human ships to destroy Velo's worlds. Is it right to remove them now just because it was convenient? But saving the Velos meant another timeline had to be deleted. Someone else would pay the price. The lock whispered again. Guardian. Balance cannot wait. Selection window closing. Rylan realized he was facing the most impossible decision any being had ever made. It wasn't about good and evil. It was about which version of history deserved to survive. He tried to think like a soldier. Choose the option that saves the most. Lives. But the lock showed him branching calculations. No matter what he picked, some version of the galaxy would fall. Could he live with that? Would anyone? In the silence of the ship, Rylan spoke softly, tears in his eyes. I don't want this. The lock replied, Desire is irrelevant. Responsibility is yours. He saw visions of the galaxy collapsing without a decision. Reality would shatter into fragments, endless loops of overlapping histories. People would be trapped forever in a maze of alternate lives, never knowing which one was real or he could make the cut. Erase part of existence, save the rest. His hands shook, tried to picture what kind of galaxy he wanted to leave behind. One of peace, one of fairness. One where humanity still existed. Or one where the erased civilizations had their justice. No matter what he chose, someone would call him a monster. But if he did nothing, he would become the destroyer of everything. The lock whispered one last time. Guardian. Final choice required, confirmed now. In my world, like life and life was I looked at a smell down his face. His lips trembled. He reached for the decision tree in his mind, and with a whisper, he made his choice. In the stars above, the timelines began to split. One reality would survive. The rest would burn. The galaxy went silent. For one impossible moment, everything froze ships in mid-flight. Stars mid-pulse, voices caught between breaths. Billions of life forms across thousands of planets felt the same sensation at the same time, the pause of existence itself. It was as if the universe waited, holding its breath, suspended on the edge of an invisible blade. Inside the starlight vow, Commander Rylan Kane sat perfectly still, eyes closed, hands locked around the infinite lock. The device had fused completely with his nervous system now. It was no longer just in his hands. It was in his veins, his thoughts, his very identity. The whispers in his mind became a single, clear tone, a vibration that stretched across space and time. Guardian decision confirmed. Rylan's choice echoed into the core of reality. The lock responded instantly, shifting the galaxy into the chosen timeline. One version of history solidified, hardening like cooled metal. The rest alternate timelines erased species, alternate wars, peaceful empires that never rose. Entire civilizations that had briefly flickered back into existence vanished again. As if they had never been, Rylan felt them go. He heard their last thoughts, saw their final moments. Whole societies dissolved back into nothingness. Memories faded. Ships blinked out of the sky. Planets returned to barren rock. But in their place, a single, stable galaxy remained the version. Rylan had chosen, in the capital city of Veltrix Prime, the Galactic Council's emergency room flickered. For a second, the chamber glitched, walls shifting between versions of themselves, one gold, one stone, one gone. Then the image locked in. The golden walls stayed. The council sat at their desks again, sweating, breathing hard, as if waking from a nightmare. High Chancellor Velker looked at the galaxy map. Only one version of reality remained. The map stabilized. The unknown fleets disappeared. The ancient enemies no longer hovered at the edge of existence. The Velo swarm was gone again, not destroyed this time, but re-erased, returned to the forgotten void from which they had come. The overlapped history snapped back into place. The galaxy's original political lines redrew themselves across the stars. It was over. Ryland Kane stood at the observation window, staring into the endless black. His reflection looked back at him, but his eyes were different now. Cold, distant, hollow. He had made the choice. He had become the choice. The lock whispered again, softer now. Correction complete. Reality stabilized. Guardian function terminated. He waited for relief. None came. His body still felt heavy, fused with the system. His mind still carried the echoes of the erased. The lock had stopped correcting, but it had not released him. Private channel opened in his thoughts. Velker's voice spoke directly into his mind. Commander Kane. The High Chancellor said carefully, "We see the stabilization. We thank you. The galaxy is safe again." Safe. Ryland nearly laughed at the word, but no sound came from his lips. Velker continued, his voice cautious. "We would like to debrief you now. Please return to Council headquarters," Ryland answered. In a voice colder than metal. "There's no need." Velker hesitated. "Why?" Ryland stared into the stars, his eyes unfocused. "'Cause I'm not coming back." He saw the galaxy clearly now, not just as it was, but as it could have been. He had held every possible future in his hands. He had destroyed thousands of versions of history with a single decision. He had chosen the timeline where humanity survived, where the Council kept power, where most species returned to the life they remembered, but it came at a cost. The Velos were gone again. So were the Creon, the Zelvari, and other civilizations erased by the Council long ago. Their second chance had been brief. Their third chance would never come. Ryland had sacrificed them to protect the rest of the galaxy. It was the only way to prevent total collapse. Back on Veltrix Prime, the Council celebrated in secret. They sent out carefully written messages to calm the citizens. The galactic reset has completed. All systems are stable. Reality is secure. Thank you for your cooperation. But inside council chambers, the leaders whispered nervously. They had seen what the infinite lock could do. They had watched realities collide and disappear. They knew now how fragile everything truly was. And they knew one thing above all. Ryland Kane was no longer fully human. He was something else now, in the silence of the Starlight Vow. Ryland walked alone through the empty halls of his ship. His crew was gone, not dead, just reassigned, erased from his current timeline. They no longer remembered serving under him. He no longer belonged anywhere. The lock whispered one last time. Guardian role complete. But memory cannot be erased. You are now part of the system, Ryland understood. He would carry this forever. The images. The forgotten timelines. The weight of erased lives. He had saved the galaxy from collapse, but he had also destroyed versions of it that might have been better. Somewhere deep in the uncharted sectors of space. Unknown to the Council, a small data fragment from the lock pulsed silently. A piece of the erased timelines, too stubborn to fully disappear, remained hidden, a backup of forgotten histories, waiting in the dark. Ryland sensed it. Yeah. He didn't tell anyone. He just stared into the stars, knowing the truth there would be. No reward this time, no ceremony, no medals, no parades. Because saving the galaxy isn't always about victory. Sometimes it's about choosing which nightmare you can live with. And for Ryland Kane, the price of that choice would never end. Ryland Kane drifted between timelines. His body still sat in the command chair of the Starlight Vow, but his mind stretched across realities. He could feel it, the weight of all the lives, all the possible histories pressing down on him. The infinite. Locke whispered softly, weaving memories through his consciousness like a spider spinning a web. Guardian integrity at 82%. Cognitive decay acceptable. Continue stabilization. Rylan wanted to scream, but there was no sound in this place. His mouth didn't work here. His mind was the only tool he had left. He saw versions of himself, millions of them. In one timeline, he had never joined the military. In another, he died as a child. In yet another, he became a villain, a war criminal who burned colonies to ash. The lock showed him all possibilities, all branches of his existence. Guardian must accept the burden of choice. Outside his mind, the galaxy quaked under the pressure of correction. On the planet Delcar 7, citizens woke up to find their cities turned to ruins overnight. They weren't bombed. They simply shifted into a version of history where their civilization had collapsed centuries ago. On Jorith Prime, the oceans turned red for 7 hours, then returned to normal. Scientists checked the readings' biological signatures from a timeline. Where the oceans had been dominated by an ancient predator species now long gone, people screamed into communication channels, begging for answers. No one answered them, because no one knew who was in charge anymore. In his locked mental prison, Rylan drifted deeper into the system. He saw flashes of council meetings, secret decisions, hidden agendas. The galactic rulers had not been innocent in this. For centuries, they had manipulated history, erasing the parts that made them look weak or corrupt. The infinite lock had pulled all those hidden moments back into the light, and now Rylan carried those secrets like scars in his mind. He watched the Velos swarm approach again in his visions, not to attack, but to plead for existence. They stood in the void, blinking in and out of memory, their massive ships covered in bioluminescent patterns of fear and hope. We remember everything. Their minds whispered to him across the correction field. We remember being erased. We remember pain. Do not erase us again. Rylan's heart twisted. He had no answer for them. The system required a choice. The galaxy couldn't contain every possible past. Some things had to go. That was the rule of cosmic balance. But who decided what deserved to exist? Who had the right? On the council world of Veltrix Prime, leaders argued behind closed doors. Some wanted to plead with Rylan to keep their species at the top of the hierarchy. Others wanted to eliminate him before he became too powerful. But they all knew the truth. They weren't in control anymore. Back inside the lock's interface, Rylan floated through fields of broken timelines. He saw memories stacked like puzzle pieces that didn't fit together anymore. There were timelines where humanity had ruled with compassion, others where they ruled with terror. There were paths where humans never left Earth. There were paths where Earth had burned. Which one was real? Which one deserved to stay? The lock whispered again, more urgently now. Final correction phase initiating. Guardian integrity at 76%. Stabilization window closing. Rylan's mind felt like it would crack apart. He didn't know how much longer. He could hold on. But he did know one thing. The galaxy's future was waiting for his decision. And no matter what he chose, there would be no escape from the consequences. In the distance, across layers of memory, a voice spoke not from the lock, but from something older. Deeper, a warning. Choose carefully, Guardian. This isn't just about history. It's about the soul of the galaxy. Rylan opened his eyes and prepared to decide. Rylan Kane sat alone in the silence of the Starlight Vow, staring into the cold abyss beyond the ship's glass panels. His body was still, but his mind burned like a supernova. The infinite lock pulsed softly in his hands, its shifting symbols. Crawling across his skin, it no longer whispered corrections. It no longer showed him infinite timelines. The time for possibilities was over. Now came consequence. Across the galaxy, billions of life forms held their breath, though most of them didn't even know why. On colony worlds, people froze in mid-motion. On trade stations, engines flickered, ships stalled, conversations hung in the air, unfinished. Every clock in the galaxy skipped a beat as reality itself paused, waiting for the Guardian's final command. Inside Rylan's mind, the lock spoke one last time. Guardian. Stabilization path confirmed. Initiating permanent lock sequence. Rylan's thoughts were calm now. too calm. His nervous system no longer belonged to him. His memories no longer belonged to him. He was the final node in the system A, living key to the galaxy's fate. The lock had given him one last power, the right to seal the timeline forever. He could feel the cost. Sealing the timeline meant no more corrections, no more changes, no backups, no reboots. It would end the infinite lock's function permanently. The galaxy would become a single, locked reality, unchangeable. No matter what mistakes came next, history would become permanent. Truth and lies would fuse into one. There would be no way back. Ryland stood up from the command chair, his legs heavy, his body almost unfamiliar now. He walked slowly to the observation deck, staring at the stars. Some of them flickered between versions of themselves, trying to stabilize. He knew once he gave the final command, the stars would stop shifting. The universe would settle. He pressed his palm against the cold glass. "I hope you're ready," he whispered to the galaxy, because this was the part no one understood. The council thought this was about politics. The Velos swarm thought this was about survival. The civilians thought this was about safety. But for Ryland Kane, this was about the final lock of reality itself. Once he spoke the next word, the galaxy would become exactly what it was at that moment forever. A silent countdown appeared in his vision. 10, 9, 8. The lock waited for his final voice command. Ryland's throat tightened. Lips were dry. His mind spun through what he had chosen. Humanity survives. The council remains in power. The erased species stay forgotten. The wars stay buried. The lies become facts. Is the winners write history? Was it the right decision? Was it just the easiest? 7, 6, 5. Ryland thought about the Velos ships blinking out of existence like fading ghosts. He thought about the children on forgotten colony worlds, their lives snuffed out because their timeline didn't make the final cut. But he also thought about the alternative, if he hadn't chosen. Everything would have collapsed. Every timeline, every species, every possibility, gone. 4, 3, 2. The galaxy would live, but it would live in a version of truth that could never be undone. Ryland took a breath. The lock waited. His voice was barely a whisper, but it echoed across the entire universe. Seal it. The infinite lock pulsed once. Reality froze. The timelines hardened. The galaxy became one. In the sky above every world, across every screen, a final message appeared written in simple, universal text. Timeline sealed. Correction complete. Reality is now permanent. There will be no further adjustments. Back on Veltrix Prime, the council leaders exhaled in relief. They had survived the impossible. The galaxy was theirs again. There would be no more threats from forgotten histories. The people would never know how close they had come to total erasure. But in secret, the council worried, because they knew what Ryland Kane had become. Inside the Starlight Vow, Ryland sat quietly in the dark, eyes glowing, faintly with leftover data streams. His body was still human, but his mind was part of the lock, now a living monument to the decision. He would never age. He would never sleep. He would never forget. The galaxy continued on, its people celebrating peace. But in the deepest parts of space, Ryland Kane remained alone, watching forever. Knowing the truth, the galaxy wasn't saved. It was sealed, and there was no way back.